Breaking today, the final traces of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the British royal family are being erased. And this is far more significant than just the destruction of their former home. Well, all of those renovations are to be bulldozed.
Something is happening inside the British royal family right now, and most people have no idea how permanent it already is. Not a rumor, not speculation, not another round of palace whispers that fade by Friday. This is final. The decision has been made, the order has been given, and the last physical trace of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle on British royal soil is being torn apart, brick by brick, room by room, until there is nothing left, not a wall, not a floor, not even the memory of a yoga studio that cost the British public more than most people earn in a decade. Frogmore Cottage is gone. Not abandoned, not reassigned, gone, being stripped back to what it was before Harry and Meghan ever set foot inside it, before the $2.4 million renovation, before the copper bathtub, before the vegan paint, before all of it. And here is what matters, because this is not a story about a house. This is a story about a decision, a cold, deliberate, irreversible decision made by a man who will one day be king, a man who has reportedly looked at every argument for giving the Sussexes a second chance and rejected every single one.
And this is very symbolic. King Charles is conceding here that Prince William is right about the fact that the Sussexes simply can never return to the United Kingdom in any form, can never have any royal role again.
Prince William has had enough. Not quietly frustrated, not diplomatically concerned, done, finished, categorical. That is the word coming out of people close to Kensington Palace. William is categorical. Harry and Meghan are not coming back. There is no negotiation. There is no back channel. There is no version of events where this story ends with a reunion on the palace steps. The door is not closing. It is already closed. What is happening right now, the demolition of Frogmore, the blocking of security reviews, the dismantling of every possible route back to royal life, this is William delivering a message so clear it does not need words. You are done. And Meghan Markle, according to people watching this situation closely, is only beginning to understand what that actually means. Because for years, she operated on the assumption that the door could reopen, that time would soften things, that the right move, the right interview, the right public appearance might eventually shift the mood inside the palace. She was wrong. Hi viewers, here's a question before going any further into this story. Do you believe Prince Harry genuinely wants to come back to royal life, or do you think it is all about the money? Drop your answer in the comments right now, because the answer to that question explains everything that is about to happen next. To understand what is happening right now, you have to go back to the beginning, back to 2018, back to the moment when the late Queen Elizabeth II handed Harry and Meghan what most people would consider an extraordinary gift, Frogmore Cottage. Sitting quietly inside the Windsor Estate, the property had been used for years as staff accommodation. Two semi-detached houses, modest by royal standards, tucked away from the grand spectacle of Windsor Castle itself. The Queen converted it into one large family home and gave it to the newlyweds as a wedding present. A home on royal grounds, rent-free, inside one of the most protected and prestigious estates in Britain. Most people would have been grateful. Harry and Meghan had other ideas. What followed was a renovation that would later become one of the most talked about symbols of Sussex excess, $2.4 million, paid for by the sovereign grant, which is, in plain terms, British taxpayer money. The work took almost a full year to complete. Contractors rewired the electrics, they replaced the ceiling beams, they installed new gas and water mains, they built a yoga studio inside a property they did not own, on land they did not pay for, using money that was never theirs to spend. And then came the personal touches. Meghan and Harry paid for their own fixtures and fittings. That part is true. But those fixtures included a £5,000 copper bathtub, decoration overseen by Vicky Charles, a designer connected to Soho House, and paint, specifically described as vegan paint, applied to the walls of a cottage that the British public had just funded from the foundation up. A £5,000 bathtub in a house they did not own that someone else paid to build. They moved in shortly before Archie was born in May 2019, and then almost immediately they left. By late 2019, they had gone to Canada. By January 2020, they had announced plans to step down as working royals. By the spring of that year, they were in California. The cottage sat behind them like a question nobody had quite answered yet. Harry eventually repaid the £2.4 million, but only after sustained public pressure, only after the outcry became impossible to ignore. He paid it back 6 months after leaving royal duties, not as a gesture of goodwill, but as damage control. It did not save him.
Harry paid back the £2.4 million 6 months after leaving the royals and was officially evicted by the king in 2023, weeks after publishing his memoir Spare.
In 2023, weeks after the publication of his memoir Spare, a book that detonated what remained of his relationship with the senior royals, King Charles officially evicted the Sussexes from Frogmore Cottage. The keys were handed back, the connection was severed, and the property sat empty. 3 years. Nobody living there, nobody maintaining it as a home. The Crown Estate owns the land, and for 3 years, the cottage that cost millions to transform stood as a quiet monument to a decision that had gone spectacularly wrong.
It's been empty for 3 years. Even Andrew thought it wasn't good enough for him to move in. Maybe if they get rid of any trace of Harry and Meghan, then someone within the royal household will fancy it.
At one point, Prince Andrew, already stripped of his own royal duties and facing his own very separate storms, was reportedly considered as a possible new occupant. He turned it down. Even Andrew, facing eviction from Royal Lodge, looked at Frogmore Cottage and decided it was not good enough for him. That is how tainted the property had become. And now the decision has been made to undo everything, not just to reassign the cottage, not just to find new tenants, but to physically reverse what Harry and Meghan did to it, to subdivide it back into separate staff units, to strip out the renovations, to remove every trace of the Sussex chapter from those walls. Sources close to the situation put it simply, the plan is to draw a line under Frogmore Cottage's history and return it to the era before Harry and Meghan ever arrived. Before, as if they never happened. That is not a property decision. That is a statement. And the man behind that statement is not King Charles. Because while Charles has been cautious, diplomatic, and at times frustratingly silent on the Sussex question, his son has been none of those things. And what William has quietly set in motion goes far deeper than any demolition order.
Their home, the place that they wanted to keep as some sort of base in the United Kingdom paid for by us, is going to go back to being multiple cottages because simply it is not fit for them to return.
There's a shift happening inside the British monarchy. Quiet, deliberate, and more consequential than most people outside the palace walls have fully registered.
King Charles III is still on the throne. That is not in question. But Charles is fighting a health battle that has changed the rhythm of royal life in ways that cannot be understated. He is present, he is working, but the gravitational center of the monarchy, the place where the real decisions about the future are being made, has moved. It has moved to Kensington Palace, to Prince William, and William's approach to the Sussex situation is nothing like his father's. Charles has shown moments of softness. There have been suggestions from various sources over the past 2 years that the king has not entirely closed the door on some form of limited reconciliation, that he misses his son, that he would, under the right circumstances, consider some kind of reduced role for Harry on the fringes of royal life. William has no such sentiment.
And William is absolutely categorical. So his father might be a little bit softer. There's a whole load of reasons for that. But William is absolutely categorical that Harry and Meghan just have to be banished. You know, they have to live in exile. And William's going to be furious if the government and this Ravet committee give him the security protection back, because that means Harry can swan in and swan out whenever he wants.
People close to Kensington Palace use one word consistently when describing William's position on Harry and Meghan: categorical. Not frustrated, not hurt, not conflicted. Categorical. The Sussexes are not coming back. There is no role for them, there is no pathway, there is no version of the future where they wear royal titles and stand on palace balconies again. That is William's position, and as his influence over the monarchy grows, his position is increasingly becoming the institution's position.
King Charles has been facing a lot of accusations lately that he is behind some type of attempt to secretly return Harry and Meghan to the UK. It's been discussed as something called Operation Thor, which has seen a whole load of political figures from Yvette Cooper to Boris Johnson sort of be sent out to try and make the British public believe that we in some way should give Harry another chance. But
now consider Operation Thor. This is the name that has been attached to what insiders describe as a coordinated effort to rehabilitate Harry and Meghan in the eyes of the British public. The idea, as it has been reported, is that political figures, names including Yvette Cooper and Boris Johnson, would be deployed in a kind of soft public relations campaign. Statements, interviews, carefully placed suggestions that perhaps Britain should give Harry another chance, that the door should not be permanently closed. The suggestion that Operation Thor originated, or was at least tolerated by Buckingham Palace, has caused significant tension. Because if Frogmore Cottage was the physical test of whether a path back existed, the demolition order is William's answer. The renovation is being torn out. The property is being subdivided. The Sussex chapter is being physically erased from Windsor. If Operation Thor was real, Frogmore Cottage was the obvious landing point, the place Harry and Meghan could return to, a base on British soil, a foothold inside the royal estate. That foothold is now rubble. And then there is the security question. Harry has made no secret of the fact that he wants to bring Meghan and their children, Archie and Lilibet, back to the United Kingdom. He has argued consistently and publicly that he cannot do so without the security protection that was removed when he stepped down as a working royal. He has challenged that decision through the courts, and there is currently an ongoing Home Office review examining whether his protection could be reinstated. If it is reinstated, Harry can move freely in and out of Britain. William, by all accounts, views that prospect with cold fury, because a Harry with reinstated security is a Harry who can attend public events, visit family, generate headlines, and slowly, incrementally, begin to look like someone who belongs in this country again, someone who belongs near the institution he walked away from. William will not allow that narrative to take hold. The demolition of Frogmore, the hardening of positions inside Kensington Palace, the quiet but firm resistance to Operation Thor, these are not separate events. They are a coordinated message, delivered without a press conference, without a statement, without a single word spoken publicly by William himself. That is how the future king operates, not through speeches, through decisions. And here is the detail that changes everything about this story. Because the financial consequences of what William is doing, the slow, methodical removal of every royal lifeline the Sussexes still have access to, are now landing in ways that Meghan, by all accounts, did not see coming.
The brand, the deals, the income streams, all of it is built on one thing, one single, irreplaceable foundation: proximity to the crown, and William is taking that away, piece by piece, decision by decision, demolition order by demolition order. The question is not whether Harry and Meghan can survive it. The question is whether they have already run out of time. Strip away the titles, strip away the drama, strip away the interviews and the documentaries and the carefully staged public appearances. What remains? That is the question being asked with increasing urgency by people who have watched the Sussex brand closely since 2020. And the answer, at this point in the story, is deeply uncomfortable for Harry and Meghan. Because the money is not working, not in the way it was supposed to, not in the way they planned when they stood in that Canadian farmhouse and announced they were stepping back from royal duties to build an independent life. The vision was clear enough: a transatlantic power couple, free from palace constraints, building a media empire on the strength of their global appeal. 5 years later, the empire is looking fragile.
Rafe, is that this is just a financial play anyway, because these two are dead broke. Now, that's not to say they don't have some money in the bank, Rafe. Of course they do, but the money in the bank is like the inheritance from Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. They're spending all of the money that they're earning on this astronomical security bill, this astronomical rental, but well, it's not a rental bill, is it? Mortgage on the property in Montecito.
Start with the basics. The Sussexes are living in a property in Montecito, California that carries a substantial mortgage. On top of that sits the cost of private security, a bill that does not stop, does not shrink, and does not get easier to manage as their income streams begin to dry up. The money they have in reserve traces back largely to inheritances, funds left by Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. That is not income, that is savings being spent. And the deals that were supposed to replace royal income are not delivering what was projected. Netflix, Spotify, speaking engagements, brand partnerships, each of these had a value attached to them in 2020 that reflected something specific: the novelty of two senior royals stepping outside the system, the intrigue of what they might say, the assumption that their connection to the British royal family gave them a cultural weight that would translate into commercial returns. That connection is eroding, and the returns are eroding with it. The Australian tour in early 2025 was meant to signal something: a high-profile international trip, charitable engagements, public appearances designed to remind the world that Harry and Meghan still carry influence beyond palace walls. People close to the situation described the financial results as mediocre. The crowds were not what was hoped, the coverage was not what was needed, the momentum did not materialize.
We've seen how mediocre and miserable their trip was to Australia in terms of raising money. We saw the huge embarrassment for Meghan when she went to see the very sensible Swiss in Geneva, and she had enough people there to fill a British phone box. Nobody is interested in them any longer.
Then came Geneva. Meghan attended an event in Switzerland that was, by any measure, a public embarrassment. Reports from those present described an audience so thin it was difficult to characterize as a crowd at all. A handful of supporters, a scattering of journalists. In a city built for global influence, the turnout was quietly devastating. That is not a bad day. That is a signal.
That was terrible. 10 people showed up. Well, 10 fans showed up. There were like a few journalists and stuff. And Rafe, guess what she thinks is going to turn around the finances now? She's actually launching matchsticks. That's the latest. Look at this. Oh, God. Matchsticks. Well, I guess it's burning down Frogmore Cottage.
And then, almost as if to underline how dramatically things have shifted, news broke that Meghan was launching a new product line. Matchsticks. Not a streaming deal, not a keynote address at a global summit. Matchsticks. A product so removed from the image the Sussexes spent years constructing that observers struggled to find the logic in it. The matchsticks are, in their own small way, the perfect symbol of where the Sussex brand currently sits. But here is the mechanism that William understands better than Harry or Meghan appear to. The value of the Sussex name, the reason Netflix signed them, the reason Spotify came calling, the reason speaking agencies once placed them at the top of their fee structures, was never really about Harry and Meghan themselves. It was about their relationship to the crown. People paid to hear from the man who walked away from the throne, the woman who said what no royal had ever said publicly, the couple who chose freedom over duty. That story had commercial power precisely because it existed in contrast to an institution that was still very much alive and very much relevant. The further they move from that institution, the less their story means. And William is accelerating that distance deliberately. Every decision coming out of Kensington Palace, every blocked pathway, every demolished renovation, every denied security review, quietly strips another layer of relevance from the Sussex story. There is no dramatic announcement, no public statement, no formal severance, just a slow and methodical removal of every connection that gave them value. And Harry, according to people watching closely, has not stopped trying to reverse it. He is still reaching, still performing, still hoping that the right gesture, the right trip, the right public moment might crack the door open again. But the door is not cracked. And what Harry has not yet fully accepted, what Meghan may be understanding only now, is that the man controlling that door made his decision a long time ago. There is something almost painful about watching someone fight for a place that has already decided it does not want them back. And that is precisely what Harry has been doing. Not loudly, not with press conferences or formal requests delivered through official channels, but through behavior, through choices, through a pattern of public appearances and carefully orchestrated trips that, when examined closely, reveal something the Sussex communications team would never admit openly. Harry is auditioning. Every international trip, every charitable engagement, every appearance where he stands straight, speaks with purpose, and performs the duties of a man who understands public service, it is all directed at one audience. Not the cameras, not the crowds, not the American media outlets that cover his every move with breathless enthusiasm. The palace. The Australia visit in early 2025 was not simply a humanitarian trip, it was a demonstration. Look at what I can still do. Look at how I carry myself. Look at how people respond when I walk into a room. The implicit argument buried inside every public engagement is the same one Harry has been making since 2020. I am still worth something to this institution. But the institution has stopped watching.
As I like to say, he really only knows how to be a prince,
Mm.
a soldier, and a polo player, none of which are very useful when you live in California. And that's why you're seeing increasingly these attempts to try to ape the royals and go on these trips to Australia and elsewhere, and basically try to remind the royal family of how good a prince he can be when he tries.
Royal historian and New Culture Forum fellow Rafe Battle-Manu put it with a precision that cuts straight to the heart of the matter. Harry, he observed, only knows how to be three things: a prince, a soldier, a polo player. None of those identities translate to California. None of them generate income in Montecito. None of them give him the sense of structure and purpose that royal life, for all its constraints, provided without effort. That is the wound underneath everything else. Strip away the Netflix deals and the Archewell Foundation and the carefully curated public moments. What remains is a man who was born into one of the most defined roles on earth, who walked away from it, and who has spent every year since trying to fill the space it left behind, and failing. Because you cannot replicate what the royal family gives you: the automatic relevance, the built-in audience, the sense that what you do matters simply because of who you are. Harry had all of that from birth. He surrendered it voluntarily, and no amount of documentary filmmaking or podcast recording or humanitarian travel has come close to replacing it.
And as the late Queen said, you can't be half in, half out. Nothing they're doing shows any sign of humility or any sign of understanding the way they do need to behave if they are to start walking back on that long, hard path back into acceptance.
The late Queen Elizabeth II understood this dynamic better than anyone. She said it plainly, "You cannot be half in and half out." She was not speaking harshly. She was speaking from 70 years of watching the institution function, of understanding that the monarchy survives precisely because its members commit to it completely or leave it completely. There is no middle ground. There is no arrangement where someone enjoys the benefits of royal association while simultaneously criticizing the institution that provides those benefits. Harry chose out, and yet here he is, still reaching, still hoping, still performing the role of the good prince for an audience of one, a brother who has already made his decision and is not interested in the performance. William watched the Australia trip. He watched every carefully staged public moment and drew the same conclusion each time. This changes nothing. Because Harry's fundamental problem is not behavior. It is not that he needs to attend more charity events, or give better interviews, or find the right combination of public gestures to soften William's position. The problem is structural. The Sussexes left. They did not just step back quietly. They gave an interview to Oprah Winfrey that was watched by an estimated 49 million people globally. They made a Netflix documentary that walked viewers through their grievances in forensic detail. Harry wrote a memoir, Spare, that named names, revealed private conversations, and placed the inner workings of the royal family before a global audience in a way that had never been done before. You do not come back from that. Not because William is unforgiving by nature, but because the institution cannot function if the message goes out that you can do all of those things and still find your way back into the fold. The precedent would be catastrophic. And so, William's position is not purely personal, or rather, it is personal, deeply and understandably so, but it is also institutional. It is the future king protecting the structure of a monarchy that will be his responsibility to lead. Harry is not a threat to that structure from California. He becomes a threat the moment he gets a foothold back inside it, which is why every foothold is being removed. The security, the cottage, the Operation Thor rehabilitation effort, one by one, quietly, without drama or announcement. And Harry keeps reaching for ground that keeps disappearing beneath him. The saddest part of this story is not the demolished cottage, or the collapsed brand deals, or the matchsticks. It is that Harry may genuinely believe, even now, that the phone call is coming. That one morning he will wake up in Montecito and something will have shifted, that William will soften, that Charles will intervene, that the institution will find a way to bring him back in from the cold. That call is not coming. William made sure of that a long time ago. Pull every thread together, lay them side by side, and the picture that forms is one of the most significant royal stories in a generation. Not because it is dramatic, not because it involves shouting or confrontation or a public falling out captured on camera, because it is quiet, and quiet decisions made by powerful people who understand exactly what they are doing tend to be the ones that last. Prince William has not given a single interview about Harry and Meghan. He has not issued a statement. He has not appeared on any platform to explain his thinking or justify his actions. He does not need to. The decisions speak with a clarity that no press release could match. Frogmore Cottage, the home the Queen gave them, the property the British public paid to renovate, the place that represented the last physical tether connecting the Sussexes to royal Britain, is being dismantled. The yoga studio gone, the copper bathtub removed, the vegan paint stripped from the walls, every modification reversed, every trace erased. The building returned to what it was before Harry and Meghan existed in the royal story. The security review, Harry's last genuine argument for maintaining a foothold in Britain, remains unresolved, and even if the Home Office ultimately rules in his favor, it will not change what William has already decided. Security allows Harry to visit. It does not give him back what he surrendered. The finances, stretched between a Montecito mortgage, a private security operation, and an inheritance that was never meant to fund a California lifestyle indefinitely, are under a pressure that the matchsticks and the sparse public appearances cannot begin to address. And the brand, the Sussex brand, built on proximity to a crown that is now actively removing them from its orbit, fading in direct proportion to the distance William is creating. Every single thread leads to the same conclusion. There is no road back.
That they are posing as always as champions of sustainability, and here they spent £2.4 million originally of taxpayer money, which they later then paid for themselves, in order to put in these yoga studios, to put in all these copper baths and so forth. So much for living within your means.
Harry has spent 5 years trying to be half in and half out, visiting for funerals, attending brief moments with family, maintaining the claim that reconciliation was always possible, that the relationship with his family was complicated but not broken, that some version of a royal adjacent life remained within reach. William's answer to that claim is Frogmore Cottage, is Operation Thor blocked, is a security review that circles without resolution, is a monarchy moving forward, confidently, publicly, visibly forward, without the Sussex chapter ever being reopened. And here is the hardest truth in this entire story. Harry may never fully accept it. He has built his identity around being a prince, a soldier, a member of the most famous family on earth. Those identities gave him structure, purpose, and a sense of where he belonged in the world. California has not replaced any of them. The philanthropic work, the carefully constructed image of a modern man who chose love over duty, none of it has filled the space that the palace left behind. Which is exactly why he keeps reaching, and exactly why William keeps closing doors. Because every time Harry reaches, he confirms that William's strategy is working, that the Sussex brand without royal proximity is not sustainable, that the only way back to relevance runs through an institution that has decided, at the highest level of its future leadership, that the Sussexes will not be returning. Meghan is in shock, not the visible public kind, the quiet kind, the kind that sets in when someone realizes that the game they thought they were still playing ended without a final whistle. There was no announcement, no ceremony, no dramatic confrontation. Just a demolished cottage, a blocked operation, a closed door, and a future king who has already moved on.
And however much or not the thaw may be coming from Buckingham Palace, certainly from on the part of the office of the Prince and Princess of Wales, things are as frosty, if not frostbitten, as ever.
The message from William could not be clearer if it had been carved into the walls of Windsor Castle itself. You are done. And if you think this story ends here, it does not, because there is a development connected to Harry's security battle that has not yet been made public, a decision reportedly being prepared inside the Home Office that could either give Harry one final opening or close the last door permanently. That story is coming, and when it breaks, everything discussed today will suddenly make a great deal more sense. Make sure you are subscribed and have the notification bell on, because that video goes up next, and you will not want to be the last one to know.